Hi, this is Tamsen Granger.
And this is Dan Abuhoff.
With Tamsen and Dan read the paper on Sunday, October 13th, 2019.
That's right. And this is, you have the dynamic duo somewhat bedraggled because today was the covered bridge ride, the famous and dreaded Tinicum covered bridge ride, which is 55 miles. 55 miles.
You can do all these different mileages.
But we do 55.
We did 55.
And
kicking and screaming,
yes.
You dragged me into this.
Yes, that's true.
Because I thought 44 last week was plenty.
It's amazing how you can ride a bicycle kicking and screaming at the same time. It takes something out of you. But that said, it was a beautiful day, so you couldn't pass it up. What are you going to do?
It was beautiful.
But
it's a heck of a ride.
It's it's like 5 hours on the bicycle. Yeah.
It was closer to 6.
All right. That's
and it's a lot of people.
Right. It's a ton of people.
So that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
There's a really dynamic quality to it. I've noticed over the years, many more women are riding now.
You know, that is true. I did notice that.
Yeah. Almost every group that went by us, there would be at least one woman, maybe more.
Right.
And
on a real bicycle.
When we started out, we'd see
very few women.
A couple of women.
Right.
So that was kind of fun. And there were interesting ethnic groups there.
Yeah.
It was, it was
right, but
fantastic, except that we had to ride the bikes.
Yeah, right. But to be clear, too, when we say we're seeing other people, it's not they're there on a lark. These are riders. So they're on $3,000-$5,000 bicycles. They're riding pretty strong. They're serious riders, okay? It's not like...
all shapes and sizes.
Right.
Every once in a while, you see somebody who...
looks like they're too heavy to be on a bicycle.
Yeah, you would think they were not physically fit at all, and they zoom by.
That's right.
And they were not on e-bikes.
Right, but we don't know if they finished. They may have passed out 15 miles in.
I think they finished.
There were a couple people, frankly, who we passed, they passed, and then we never saw them again. I don't think they finished. But it's not important. The point is that... it's full disclosure. You're getting a somewhat compromised physically pair here in terms of Tamsen and Dan, but we're going to do it anyway. And it was a beautiful day, and it's worth doing. You know, this ride is worth doing. Maybe not the 15 times we've done it, but it's worth doing.
Actually, we've done it more than 15 times.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Oh, my. All right.
We've been doing it a long time.
All right. So the big sports story and political story combined in one this week has been the NBA and China.
I'm so mystified by this.
Yeah, you don't.
Why
you're
can't
not really
people just
mystified.
apologize and go home?
Well, they kind of did, but here's why it's really weird.
Why doesn't it work?
I'm not saying it won't.
Okay.
Okay, but it's still weird. So Daryl Morey, the general manager of the Houston basketball team, the Houston Rockets, a guy who's admired in the league as a forward-thinking individual, puts out a tweet which says, like, "Go Hong Kong. Hong Kong folks have the right idea. China's being oppressive." All right. A lot of people feel that way. As soon as he lets that go, it's a huge firestorm. China is incredibly ticked off. The league is going, what was that? And Morey withdraws the tweet. Mm-hmm. And everybody's scrambling. So why? Why go so nuts? And the answer is this. Number one, unless I know you do know, is that the Chinese people have a super authoritarian government. They don't go for that kind of thing. They don't brook dissension. They don't want to deal with people who, in business, who say mean things about them politically. And the NBA is doing a lot of business with China and wants to do more. And they're the biggest market on the come for the NBA. There's a lot of market now. They sell a lot of material there. So China immediately makes some remarks like, oh, wait, I don't know if we want to do business with the NBA. And Adam Silver is going like, he has to sort of walk a tightrope and to say, well, what's your question? What are we going to say?
President Trump says anything he wants about China.
President's different. That's different. China has to deal with President Trump. They don't have to deal with the NBA. Okay? So, Silver has to do a fine line. On the one hand, he has to say, apologies, China. You guys are the greatest, whatever. But on the other hand, we let people speak their minds in the NBA, but that was regrettable. And you're saying this off, this can never work because these players are very outspoken in the NBA. They're going to get all kinds of remarks about China, and China is going to shut down the relationship with the NBA. It's a disaster. How could this possibly work? And you know what happens next?
What?
Nothing. Nothing means nobody in the NBA follows up. Nobody supports Morey. No one follows. No players say, yeah, Hong Kong. Come on, China, wake up. That the kind of thing that the NBA player would do in any other political realm, zero. Silence. And they even go to Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr, very outspoken, coach of the Golden State, very politically astute. And they say, what do you think? I'm sure you have something to say. Very anti-Trump. He says, I don't know, this is tricky. And he doesn't say anything. And so what's going on? And I can't figure it out. And the Wall Street Journal opened my eyes. Not the New York Times. The Wall Street Journal opened my eyes. And what the Wall Street Journal explained is this. Yeah, you would have thought perhaps that the NBA would have trouble disciplining its own players because the NBA's business interests that the players wouldn't respect. But it turns out the business interests are the business interests of the NBA players themselves. They deal directly with China. LeBron James was in China when this happened doing business. Okay? He sells an enormous amount of equipment that he endorses in China. James Harden, the star of that Houston team, with Daryl Morey as the GM, has made 2 trips to China a year, sells merchandise. After Morey's thing came out, he made a statement apologizing. This is a player apologizing for the general manager, saying, oh, he's kind of a hothead. You know, I'm a player. I'm 26 years old. I'm more relaxed. China, we still love you. He literally says, we still love you. The quote is this. It's unbelievable. We apologize. We love China. I mean, it's like Roller. It's like Freaky Friday. But the fact of the matter is the players have their own economic relationships. And what's going on with Kerr, when he keeps his mouth shut, he can't speak out because he's got his own player, Steph Curry, who sells the second most amount of jerseys with Under Armour in China. So he's going to get in trouble with his own player. He doesn't care about the league. So it's a real role reversal thing where the players have their own direct business interests with China. And for that reason, they are going to keep their mouths shut. And Silver, when he says, you know, we're going to walk a fine line, he doesn't have to do anything because the players know where the money is. And they're just going to toe the line with China. So it's totally weird.
Okay.
I see you're moved by that. I find it unbelievable, but it works. But in any event, Eli Manning, you were clamoring for some more insight into Eli Manning's personality.
I was not.
And I came up with an article for Sports Illustrated. It's an interesting article.
Well, you handed me the world's longest article.
It is the world, yes.
From Sports Illustrated,
yes.
I guess. And all about Eli.
Yes.
Because we worry about Eli.
Yes.
We look at him and we feel we can imagine his emotions about being benched, etc., right, and what kind of person he is.
And it turns out
he's not at all any of those things.
Right. We can't. We don't have a clue.
Right. He apparently is his own man.
Yes.
He apparently, has a life.
He has his own
outside of what we see on the flat screen.
He's in his own orbit.
Yes.
That you put it in a good way, outside of the flat screen. And it turns out, as revealed in this article, he's perhaps not as put off by all this as you might think, right?
No, apparently not. And it's an article worth looking up because it is kind of goes into depth about what kind of person he is growing up. First of all, when he was born, they were worried about him because he only weighed 9 pounds. All right. Peyton and Cooper came out of the womb at 12 pounds plus. Yeah. Which is just astonishing to me.
Yeah. They're big children.
What was Olivia eating?
Yeah.
That's what I want to know.
Yes.
When she was pregnant. But anyway, so lots of funny stories about him. Stories about he loves karaoke. He's, very sociable compared to, isn't that funny that on the commercials and everything, Peyton looks like the fun guy,
right,
the sociable guy. And growing up, he was Mr. Football. He didn't do anything but football.
Right.
Couldn't think about anything
and
but
Eli
football.
is the easy, goofy, affable party guy.
Throwing parties, getting in trouble.
When you say karaoke, he has his own karaoke machine.
Well, he had it he had one at a very young age.
Right.
It was his main thing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Right. No, a lot of people have karaoke machines.
No, not quarterbacks. Not quarterbacks.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. But, so they have a lot of people speak out on his behalf. And they say his teammates are just amazed when people are concerned that he's not tough or doesn't care as much as he should. And, they have statements of people saying, you have no idea. He works his butt off.
Right. Well, he cares. You know, the funny thing is that according to his article, he cares. He does want to win. But he's not, he has this total sense of perspective. He's just going to come in and do his best. He loves his teammates. He wants to be with his teammates. And he wants to do what he can to help them win. If they win, they win. If they don't, they don't. But he knows he put in the effort, which is an unbelievable maturity.
He wouldn't mind being like second string quarterback.
Right. As long as he's on the team.
Just helping out.
He loves being on the team.
For the next 10 years or something.
So if the team says, we think you should take a step back, he says, oh, that's what the team wants.
They also say that he was unfairly saddled with the role of scapegoat.
Yeah, well, I think that's true.
That there was a lot of dysfunction in the Giant family.
Yeah.
I mean, basically saying McAdoo was not a good coach.
Yeah.
And that it was manipulated to make it look like Eli wasn't a good player.
Well, and you're seeing it now, because when Daniel Jones came in, everybody said, oh my God, he's turned the team around. Except now he's lost the last few games. And it's not about
So it's
Eli.
not just about the quarterback.
Yeah.
So, it was a nice article told about his wife, Abby, his 3 girls, all his friends come over after games. Not allowed to talk about the game.
Right.
Just talk about family and stuff.
Every Sunday evening.
He does his crazy imitations of Saturday Night Live.
And they're in Summit, New Jersey. Everybody drives up. They order some pasta. They order some lasagna, and they chill out.
Yeah. So he's okay. For those of you who are worried about Eli, he's absolutely okay. In more ways than one. He seems like an interesting, thoughtful...
Yeah, they did. The debate that always goes on in talk radio and has been going on for years is Eli a Hall of Fame quarterback? Will he be in the Hall of Fame? Yeah. And this article aptly says, something, that's an interesting debate, but who doesn't care about that? Eli. So, all takes all kinds, and it's interesting to have a guy who's that mature. And
one funny family story, when his mom, Olivia, was pregnant with him.
Yeah.
She and Archie were worried because he would be born right during NFL playoffs or something.
Didn't have to worry about that.
And they didn't have to worry about it. The team went 1-15 that year, so it all worked out.
So Archie played for the Saints. They were terrible then. Okay, so let's talk about a guy, though, who is weird in kind of a negative way, I think at least, is Lance Armstrong. So you thought you heard the last...
There's a roller coaster guy. There's a guy America was worshiping,
right?
Including our buddy Tom Walsh.
Worshiping. I can't tell you how many times is the real deal. He's telling the truth. And I'm saying, come on, he must have used steroids. Everybody says he used steroids. Tom said, no way. He said unequivocally he didn't use steroids. I'm sure they didn't use steroids. And it turns out he did use steroids.
Right.
And
so he fell from grace.
Fell from grace? Yeah. Here's what the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency determined after investigating Lance Armstrong. He, quote, ran the most sophisticated, professionalized, and successful doping program that sport has ever seen, end of quote. Armstrong disputes that his doping was unprecedented. Doesn't dispute anything else. Unprecedented, he said, I don't know about that. But the doping. And of course, he's the most successful bicycle racer of all time until then. He won the Tour de France 7 times. So what did he have to do? He was stripped of all 7 titles. He was stripped of all other titles.
Right.
He was knocked off the pedestal. It was like, it was like the statue of, Hussein or Stalin getting knocked down and being dragged into the river or something like that.
Yeah.
And he was supposed to disappear, except he doesn't. And that's the weird thing. But
it's okay because the doping scheme wasn't that sophisticated.
Well, it was sophisticated. It just was not unprecedented.
Okay.
So I'm reading. I read Cycling Plus, which is a great bicycle magazine
from the UK.
Yes, from the UK. You have to, if you want a bicycle magazine, UK is the way to go. So they have an article in there, and I'm saying, "What's this?" And the article is by a guy named John Whitney, and saying, "This is totally weird." Lance Armstrong is back. Lance Armstrong, the most disgraced guy in the world. And now money's flowing into his coffers. He has a podcast called The Move, and The Move is one of those podcasts about the Tour de France. Your mom probably listens to it. And according to Whitney, he says it's a terrible podcast. This guy says, is a UK bicycling guy. It's inaccurate about a lot of things, and it celebrates Armstrong. But the fact of the matter is, it was, depending on who's measuring, between the first and the third most listened to sports podcast of any sport during the Tour de France, more than the other much better podcasts. And this guy says, what's going on? This guy is an awful doper, disgraced guy. Well, there's an article in Bloomberg Business Week explaining what went on. And what went on is that Lance just didn't go away. And he tried different forays, and he eventually came up with this podcast. And he does it with George Hincapie, who we know has this operation in South Carolina.
Yeah, he's a big shot bike rider out of South Carolina.
Right, and he has a hotel called the Domestique. He was a Domestique for Lance Armstrong, which are the guys who hold the lead. But he also testified against Lance Armstrong. And Lance said, bygones be bygones. And he gets Hincapie with him, and they're doing this show, and people tune in. And what clued him in, somebody sent him a market survey that was done about who's, what do you like best about cycling? And whatever they said about cycling, they said. But one of the questions was, who's your favorite cyclist? And it could have been Greg LeMond. It could have been Chris Froome, who had won the last 5 Tour de France. And overwhelmingly, they said Lance Armstrong. So he's showing this to everybody. He says, I've still got it. And he's back. And unapologetically, he makes more than $1 million from the podcast. He's got plans going forward. And not only that, but in the broadcast of the Tour de France this year, which is broadcast on NBC, an NBC affiliate, NBCSN or something like that, guess who they chose to do the broadcast? Lance Armstrong.
Ah.
And it's like he's like a bank robber. He's giving tours of the bank or something like that. Anyway, it just shows that that's the way America is. Memory is limited, or we just got a tremendous comfort level with high crime. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it tells you. But Lance is back. So your own explanation. I can't explain it. If you can explain it, Tamsen, you'll let me know.
I don't know. Maybe he's just interesting.
I think he's more notorious.
Well, I think Americans are willing to forgive and forget.
Maybe. You know what this guy Whitney says?
I said that with my tongue in cheek.
Well, you know what this guy Whitney says, the English guy? So he's a step removed because he's English. He says, you know what Lance is? He's charismatic, which is another way of saying he doesn't care what anybody thinks about him at all. And his first few podcasts, he was tentative. He was vulnerable. They weren't interesting. Now he's telling people what to think, and people respond to that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There you go.
Interesting.
Yes, I thought so.
So, what to think about your health? Interesting article in the Wall Street Journal. Those probiotics may actually be hurting your gut health. By Lorenzo Cohen, the new fashionable pills and foods meant to increase the variety of healthy bacteria in our bodies can actually have the opposite effect.
Probiotics, everybody loves probiotics.
It's all about, the thing is the gut microbiome.
Yeah.
And that just refers to, the everything that's going on in your gut.
Yeah.
Everything that's living there. Bacteria, parasites, viruses. And the more diverse it is, apparently the better it is for your health, your mental health. And even there are now studies saying for how your body deals with immunotherapies for various cancers, including melanoma. And so Lorenzo Cohen, who's writing this article, he's a doctor, actually, and he was diagnosed with advanced melanoma. And so he was already a vegan with a high-fiber diet.
Right.
He makes a point of kind of trying to lower his glycemic load, he calls it. Just means trying to lower sugar, the amount of sugars in your system. And after 6 months on his... And he's taking the probiotic pills as well. After 6 months on this regimen, they test his microbiome, and diversity has plummeted.
Meaning he hasn't solved his problem.
Right. Meaning that he was doing this in order to enhance his body being able to respond to the immunotherapy for the cancer that he was experiencing.
And so this was
what he does, and this coincides with a study saying the pills, the over-the-counter probiotic supplements, actually don't do any good. In fact, they may harm because they reduce the diversity.
So that's surprising in some respects, but it's also consistent with the notion that we hear in a lot of contexts, which is there are benefits to be gotten from certain foods with respect to certain chemical reactions, but the supplement that people develop in order to evoke the same reactions never work.
Never works.
And this doesn't work
Expensive urine.
That's right.
And so he reduces, his emphasis on these probiotic-rich foods. Maybe he's drinking less cider vinegar. I don't know. And he goes back to the whole grains. And apparently the whole grains really have an important role in this. So we should be doing that. Anyway, he undoes some of what he was doing, and they look at his microbiome, and it is bouncing back.
All right.
So
well,
there you have it.
The supplements.
Don't waste your money.
Yes. All right.
Well, that's good advice. Eat a healthy diet.
Well, that's looking.
Eat some. You know what he mentions? Buckwheat, which is kasha.
Yes. Well, we love kasha.
We always knew kasha would cure everything.
Well, we haven't had kasha for a long time. Think about
it. Okay, why don't you whip some up?
I used to make kasha. I used to make kasha by myself.
I don't remember you ever making kasha.
When I was living alone with Columbia, I used to make kasha in the hot
place. For yourself?
Yeah.
That seems highly unlikely.
Oh, God. I didn't have an egg to put in. I would eat it with just water. It was tough doing.
I think it's, I don't think that's especially good for you. I think grains, sort of in combination with other nutritional.
I didn't have. All right. So, we haven't talked about the Joker movie. We're not going to talk about it now.
I will say that my students who have been to see it love it.
Really?
Yeah.
And these are people in their 20s.
These are people in their 20s. Yeah. And, they're not knuckleheads.
Okay.
Yeah.
The reviews, I don't have a position on it. I haven't seen a positive review. I've seen some variety of negative reviews. I think the Times was disposed not to like it no matter what was in it. I think the Journal looked at it more clearly and said that there were a lot of things very interesting. They love the cinematography. They love the music. But they said there's not enough there, which I think, when I read, that's probably a fair review. But one thing that people are talking about is, the portrayal by Joaquin Phoenix, and the key.
They especially love him.
They love him, and people like him.
Yeah.
And if you want to like the movie, I think if you see it as a character study, maybe it satisfies at that level. But the key to playing the Joker, according to many people, is the Joker laugh. The Joker laugh. He has this maniacal laugh. Mm-hmm. And so the Times wrote an article about what's the best Joker laugh, and what do they have to compare? Well, that there was the Heath Ledger version of the Joker. There was Jack Nicholson. There were a couple of television shows like Gotham, which had someone playing the Joker. They dig as far as they can. And they're trying, and they say check all media for the Joker laugh. And they decide the best Joker laugh, which I think is the critical key, was not Joaquin Phoenix's, but was not Jack Nicholson's, was not Heath Ledger's. It was from Batman the Animated Series. Uh-huh. Right? And the voice of the Joker in Batman the Animated Series was the best Joker laugh. And here's the most amazing thing about that. And this is something I noticed once when I was just watching this with Granger when he was a kid, I think. And I just looked at the credits. I said, could that be? The Joker was voiced on that series by Mark Hamill.
Really?
And they interviewed him. They say, first of all, they say it's a great laugh. It's maniacal. It takes a lot of effort to do it. It's very unique. It's great acting. Mm-hmm. And they say, how did you do it? And he said, well, I looked at him. The image is all teeth. I tried to just laugh with my teeth. I did this. But the truth is, I drew on another part I played. Say, Luke Skywalker. No. He said, he played on the stage, and this is something I've forgotten, Mozart and Amadeus.
Oh.
Right?
Yeah.
He says, that's the Mozart laugh.
Really?
That's where it comes from.
Really?
Okay? That's where it comes from. And I'm saying, wow. So the Joker laugh, the great Joker laugh comes from Luke Skywalker via Amadeus Mozart. I mean, that's insane, really. And then I was thinking even more about that, I'm trying to remember how that worked out with him. Well, the truth is, he had gotten the part on the London stage. They changed casts several times. It started out in London, Amadeus. And he auditioned for the movie. He almost got the movie part. The movie was a big success, Milos Forman. And the part went to... he didn't get the part in the movie. The reason he didn't get the part even in the audition was because Milos Forman says, I want all knowns.
Oh.
Right? I want all unknowns. So he said to him, I'm not going to cast you because everyone's going to say, I know who that is. That's Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
And instead he gave it to Tom Hulse.
Yeah.
Okay? Tom Hulse, not completely unknown. Tom Hulse was known here in this country for Animal House. He played Pinto. He played the youngest, goofiest, most naive kid in Animal House. And then he goes from there to Amadeus. He's in the movie Amadeus. And interestingly, what is he doing now? He became a Broadway producer. So you know what he's one of the producers of now?
What?
Ain't Too Proud.
Really?
Yeah. So it's just kind of interesting. So Mark Hamill.
Catching up with Mark Hamill.
Yes, there you go. It comes from Mozart. So there was an interesting letter following up on what we discussed previously, which is how to enjoy baseball by knitting. By knitting.
Yes, by knitting.
Yeah.
That's why I don't enjoy baseball. I don't knit.
Take it up. Take it up.
Anyway, there was a nice letter to the editor from Barbara Gold in Philadelphia. And she says, I loved this story. A very long time ago, 1963 to be exact, a guy I had just started to date took me to a Phillies-Dodgers doubleheader. The first game went to 13 innings. I knit an entire sweater that night. P.S. We have been married 54 years.
How do you like that? Oh,
Go Barbara.
Go. That's a good story. Well, I was telling you about another story, and I thought you had an interesting reaction to it. The Wall Street Journal runs sort of a page every week, or at least every time they do the magazine. I think it's every week. And they pick a word or a concept or a theme, and they have 6 celebrities comment on it. And it's sometimes mildly interesting, often not. But it was nostalgia this time. And Michael Lewis was one of the 6 people. And Michael Lewis, for whatever reason, he chose to concentrate on baseball. He says, when I think of nostalgia, I think
And who's Michael Lewis?
Michael Lewis wrote The Blind Side. He wrote Moneyball.
Oh, okay.
He's a writer. And he... But he doesn't just write sports books. He wrote Liars Club business books too. But he said that's what baseball is. Baseball is totally nostalgia. It's about men who are recalling their relationship with their fathers when they're watching baseball. That's the only thing that keeps baseball going, in Michael Lewis's view. Otherwise, it's pretty dull stuff as opposed to basketball. Basketball is exciting. It's the current sport. It's going to take over. It doesn't rely on nostalgia. So baseball is kind of doomed. That was his comment. And I remember my reaction to you was, is that really true? Because I certainly remember watching basketball with my father. I'm watching other sports with my father. But why would it be that baseball is so nostalgia oriented? And but I think you pushed back. You kind of supported Lewis, saying you do see a big element of that.
Yeah. Well, I just feel that none of our kids were big baseball players. Mm-hmm. So it's not about them playing baseball. So the extent they watch baseball at all is kind of to connect to you. And you, of course, for you, was a great kind of highway of communication between you and your father. You loved to watch the Mets together, and you spent zillions of hours doing that.
Zillions might be an exaggeration.
I'd sort of doubt that, to be honest.
Yeah.
So, it just reminds me of, people collecting LPs.
Yeah.
And people were always so sure that various records would be tremendously valuable the older they got. And the truth is, once you lose the people who remember about them, once you lose the listeners of Rudy Valley records are not
but I think
that thing. I think when you get further and further away from baseball being a part of people's lives in ways besides just on the TV.
But here's what I gave that some more thought. I thought it was interesting what you said. But there's something about baseball is different from other sports that I think causes the connection in a way that the other sports don't cause connection and cause it to live on. And that's this: baseball is about individual performance more than other sports, and it's about success. But more than anything, it's about failure. and how people deal with failure. And I've heard people write up that baseball is about morality as much as anything else. People, what's right, what's wrong, who deserves what. And you end up identifying with the plight of various players because you see your favorite team, your various players who are your favorites fail and fail again. And without going too deeply into this, I was just reminded of this just this week. Okay? So Washington was playing the Dodgers. It was the deciding game. And the question is who's going to go on in the NCLS. Dodgers being heavy favorites. And the Dodgers, the best pitcher of this generation over the past 10 years, let's say, is Clayton Kershaw, who's been the best regular season pitcher. And now he's getting a little bit older, so I can't say he's number one right now. But over the last 10 years, he really has. And he's still a star, and he makes $1 million. He makes $30 million a year. And he's the face of the Dodgers. But for whatever reason, he hasn't done well in the postseason. He hasn't done well in the playoffs and the World Series. And it's a drag on his reputation. It clearly gnaws at him. So sure enough, the Dodgers have a situation in the deciding game, which is the fifth game. They're beating the Washington Nationals 3-1. They just need 6 outs to win the game. And they've had a magnificent pitching performance by a rookie. And they bring in, as they sometimes do, to start the 8th inning, a starting pitcher, Clayton Kershaw. It's like shooting a squirrel with an elephant gun. He's going to pitch the 8th inning. Mm-hmm. And maybe more. He got one out in the 7th, but he's going to pitch the 8th inning for us. And then we'll knit this up. And that's it. 3-1. We got him. And Kershaw comes in, and on the second pitch, he gives a home run. And now it's 3-2. And on the very next pitch, he gives up another home run. And now it's 3-3. And the lead is gone, and it goes into extra innings, and they lose, and the series is lost. And Kershaw is the GOAT again. And here's what's interesting. They have a post-game press conference, okay? And Kershaw, obviously distraught, sits down, and before anyone asks him a question, he says, look, I know a lot of you guys are going to say that whatever success I've had in the regular season, I'm a failure in the postseason. And again in September, I've failed. And you know what? You're right. You're absolutely right. And you know what? I'm going to come out next spring and going to give it another shot. Any questions? And it's a stunning. And he's completely distraught, taking full responsibility. Mm. And I mean, it's almost biblical. I mean, you know, how that affects you quite apart from the excitement of a moment in a baseball game. And baseball has that dimension. Or let me put it another way. If you ever see that in an NBA press conference, give me a call. Okay? You know where to reach me. That's not going to happen. So there's something about baseball. Well, we'll just leave it at that. The Yankees play the Astros tonight, and we'll see how that goes. You have to learn to accept failure if you're a baseball fan, unless you're a Yankee fan. That's the way that works. So those fans are not...
And it works for life, too.
Yeah.
All right, so on that note, with a life lesson from Dan and baseball...
Yes.
We'll be... moving on and soaking our tired muscles.
That's right.
So this is Tamsen Granger.
And Dan Abuhoff.
The Tamsen and Dan read the papers. See you next week.